Hi, and welcome to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson from OTG Capital. We broadcast locally on Radio Northern Beaches here in Sydney and around Australia on the Community Radio Network and through the auspices of the Community Broadcasting Association of Australia, which has roughly 450 radio stations. We're picked up by about 15 regional stations. So to our country listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in and having a listen. I'm really pleased to welcome back to the microphone and camera Anna Venonnen, who is with Coredata. Now, she's a researcher at Coredata, and now Anna has been on the show before, and we did a profile last time on who is investing in crypto. Wildly popular episode. So, Anna, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me back on the show, Ray. Really keen to get into the conversation again.
Wonderful. So you've just released a white paper last month. And so when we go to air, it'll be a few weeks from now. But you're now talking about crypto in 2025. And it's one of these fascinating things now that I've got a social media manager who understands TikTok a heck of a lot better than I do. And the algorithms that drive this. The moment you put crypto into any syntax, on a hashtag or any kind of social media feed, it explodes. And I recently had your boss, Andrew Inwood from Coredata, also on the show. We were talking about Trump 2.0, and that's another one of those keywords that all of a sudden it just goes through the roof and people want to listen. Could be anything afterwards, but they still decide to listen first off. So today, what we're talking about is we're going to go through your white paper, which, ladies and gentlemen, you'll be able to download for free. So one of those wonderful, we love free stuff on Dollars and Making Sense, by the way. We love free stuff. And so Anna has kindly allowed us to send this out. Australia's Crypto Investors. So Anna, I never assume lightly, how much work and hours did you actually put into this report before it actually came to print?
It's a good question. I mean, there's a lot that goes into a project like this. So we do it from the design stage. So we have to think through what is kind of topical to actually try and delve into this year. Mm-hmm. And then we design the survey from scratch. Then we do the field work. In this case, it was a little bit extra complex because we did it with nationally representative sampling. So that means you have to basically match your sample to the Australian population by things like age and gender and state distribution and that kind of thing. So it takes a little bit longer, but it's super rewarding because then you can get a sense of things like how many people in Australia are holding cryptocurrency. Yeah, so yeah, I'd say quite a lot of time went into it. And then, of course, the write-up, that always takes time to think through things and pull out the findings and really think through what are the implications for this.
Okay, great. Now, you talk about a survey. Can I ask how many participants were in that survey?
Yeah, so there was two sort of portions to it. As I mentioned just before, we did the nationally representative sampling. So that in that portion of it, there were 740 entrants into the survey, and that's how we gauged crypto adoption. And then of that sort of stage, then the next people that followed through to that were your crypto investors. So we had 311 crypto investors who did the survey.
Oh, that's excellent, Anna. Look, that's a pretty good sample that we're talking about. And looking at some of the key statistics that you've been able to bring to bear in your overview, I think one of the things that really struck me, given that I've had my own fund out now for about 7 years. We do bonds, nothing special. It's pretty simple offering in private credit. I've always eschewed crypto in Bitcoins, I must say. I'm not a big believer in it. But with the change of government in the United States and a big favoring now, there's this thing that I think there's a bit of a juggernaut happening there. But I think I was always thinking it was on the outskirts, but this research that you've done really proves otherwise. And I think the statistic that really just slapped me in the face big time was that 12% of everyday Australians now hold some form of cryptocurrency. Was that a number that's, I mean, it absolutely gobsmacked me. Was that a number that sort of floored you guys at Coredata as well?
This year, because we had done the study before. So the one in November 2023, we also gauged adoption rates. And from that study, we got 11%. And at the time, RBA did a study as well. They also came out with 11%. So
Wow.
yeah, it wasn't a surprise. In some sense, I would have thought maybe it would have grown a little bit more, but I guess it hasn't been. It went through a lot of sort of hype and kind of engagement during the COVID-19 lockdown. I think it's sort of like the many of the people who were going to get into it got into it then. They had a lot of time in their hands and that kind of thing. But now it's sort of at this point where you have a lot of regulation that's coming through, but still things are very unclear. So I think that the people who are more hesitant now, I guess, are not there yet. They would wait for more clear signals from regulators and, to have more strong guidance from financial advisors and that kind of thing, if they want to keep going into it.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective as a bonds manager, we do commercial loans, which is in effect a bond. We've been struggling to get market participation above 5 to 6%, and just to sit there and cryptocurrency is just literally Johnny on the spot. It's just turned up, and they're at 12%. And certainly, would you believe that market share is going to continue to grow?
For sure. I mean, a lot of the people that are holding it are younger people. So I think 7 in 10 are under 40 years old. So I do see this as an area that's going to grow in the future, especially as it becomes more entangled with traditional finance and sort of more familiar to everyday investors. It's not sort of just the realm of those kind of early adopters or people that are quite into technology or cryptography or those kind of things that was really driving it in the beginning. It's really broadened out now.
And so again, I'm moving down through your paper and reasons for investing in cryptocurrency, belief in its future value. I'm staggered by that 52% number. I mean, I have very little faith in it right now because I get asked about this all the time. And so when I'm trying to correlate, at least when people talk about gold, and gold is on such a binder right now, it's gone up 45, 50% year alone. It's that kind of commodity of safety when they're in turmoil, and there's a lot of turmoil around. But a belief in future value at 52% when, for example, did you do any research, for example, when you're doing this around non-fungible tokens? Because NFTs started and went nowhere. And so that to me was more indicative of what a digital asset really could potentially look like. Did you get any feel for that?
We did ask about NFTs. I mean, they make up a much smaller part of, the population who are actually holding NFTs. You're right, like they did have a very big boom, I think around 2022, 2021, that kind of time. But I think what was interesting there is it got very speculative, and you had this, it was basically like a bubble. Like there was these NFTs of not very well done art selling for $1 million or something crazy like that. So it went through that stage, but now NFTs they're still there, and I think the technology behind it is still of interest to people in the scene, but without all that sort of speculative fluff around it, because there is really interesting use cases for NFTs for things like tickets, for instance, so that you can prove who owns the ticket and it can't be sort of resold, or you can control how it sort of moves. So those kinds of things and sort of reputational tokens and that kind of thing are really interesting still. I just think it's fallen out of the sort of mainstream trend at the moment. Yeah.
Sure. And again, the profile of who's actually doing investing, you've made the comment about age. And yet again, men were twice as likely to say that belief in the philosophies or values surrounding crypto phenomenon were a factor when compared to women, 26 versus 13%. So women are still more conservative, I guess. Again, I see this come through not just in crypto, but right throughout a whole range of investing topics. I guess that distribution when you're looking at this age graph, that doesn't surprise, does it?
No, not at all, really. I mean, there's a couple of reasons for that. The first is that, like, the younger people are much more comfortable with digital forms of value, where, you know, some of us barely use cash or have had very limited use of cash in our life. I'm talking about the particularly young people, you know, that is being phased out. So our experience of money and value has always been quite digital. I think that's quite an interesting factor to it. When you're thinking about, you know, tangible value and that kind of thing, there is a bit of a generational difference there. And of course, technology is a big thing. You know, we're digitally native. I think that, you know, there's less intimidation to getting into some of these areas. Also, I guess you've got the risk side of it, which I'm sure you would have your opinion on as well. So I think, you know, when you're younger, many of these people are around that age of 30s, which is where we see the highest rates of ownership. You've got people who are starting to have more sort of discretionary income so that they can actually allocate towards these kinds of things. And they're also at a stage where they typically take a bit more risk financially as well.
Sure. You're right. I mean, I still believe that there's far too much risk. There's too many stories still, even in 2025, of money being stolen out of crypto exchanges, and people just shrug their shoulders. And we're not talking about piddly amounts of money. We're talking, you know, 600 million to 1.5 billion dollars being pilfered through poor cryptography, poor password management, or people just forgetting their passwords and they can't access their coins. And so again, that becomes a big issue. So look, when we start looking at the profile, I guess earning capacity becomes a big part of it, because, you know, we keep talking about the cost of living crisis. It's real. Certainly, you know, we don't have to be too short-sighted when you walk into the grocery store. You know, since COVID, the cost of just buying an egg or a loaf of bread has gone up significantly, hasn't it? And so with crypto investors, they still tend to be well-heeled. Is that something that you found?
Yeah, so we found that the highest amounts of basically engagement with crypto is in that income range of 150 to 250,000 per year.
Mm-hmm.
So it again speaks to that kind of discretionary income and being able to take a bit of risk. You know, they're not going to miss a rent payment if they invest a bit in crypto and that kind of thing.
Sure. Okay, well, look, we're about half time. You're here on Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson. I'm really pleased to have at the microphone Anna Venonnen, who is a senior researcher with Coredata here in Sydney. And Coredata have offices all around the world. They're well respected and really know their stuff when it comes to financial research. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back with you in just a moment. Hi, and thank you for listening to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly radio program about finance, money, and investing on Radio Northern Beaches and nationally on the Community Radio Network around Australia. The views, comments, and opinions aired during our program should not be construed or viewed as financial advice. Any commentary is general advice only and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. You should consider whether the advice is suitable for you and your personal circumstances. If in doubt, you should contact an authorised licensed financial planner. We welcome questions and feedback, and you can get in touch with us via our blog, social media channels, or email. Please search for Dollars and Making Sense in your favourite podcast platform, or check out our blog at otgcapital.com.au/blog. Hi, and welcome back to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson. I'm really pleased to have at the microphone Anna Venonnen, who is a senior researcher with Coredata here in Sydney. And Coredata, if you look at their website, have offices all around the world, and they supply and work for some of the leading financial houses in the country and around the globe. And I'm really pleased. I've had Anna's CEO on the show a number of times, Andrew Inwood. A wealth of information, not just because they're researchers, but they really do know their stuff. And Anna Venonnen, you've done a lot of research on crypto. It's the hot topic. And so we're talking about crypto today. And before we went to the break, we were talking about the profile of a crypto investor. why they've got faith in it. And we talked a little bit about NFTs. Now, in your white paper, which will be available on our blog and the website, it's a free asset. Please download it, have a listen, have a look through it. It's really interesting read. You mentioned here crypto as a gateway asset. That really drew my eyes. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, this was one of the most interesting findings to me, I think, that came out of this research. So basically, we wanted to understand a few different things here. Like, were people who hold crypto holding other assets, firstly, or were they sort of these all-in type investors that don't have diversified portfolios in general? And what we found from that is 9 in 10 are holding other assets. So it is sort of moving toward this more traditional, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word, type of investor who knows about the value of diversification, is interested in different assets, and they're seeing cryptocurrency as just one portion of their overall kind of strategy around wealth. So when I say a gateway asset, what we mean by this is that we looked into those people who hold multiple assets, and we asked them basically, was cryptocurrency the first asset you held, or did you hold other assets before it? And what we found there is that 22% of all crypto holders said that crypto was their first investment, and then they subsequently went into other investments. So this is really interesting because I think people who enter through that route, whose sort of first foray into investing is through cryptocurrency, will have different kind of expectations and appetite for risk and that kind of thing when they go to more traditional styles of investing. So it'll be really interesting to see how that shift in the generation kind of plays out in their engagement with traditional finance as well. Yeah, do you have any thoughts on this? Because I think
I do. I guess conversely, people my age that have been investing for 20, 30, 40 plus years, obviously crypto didn't exist. I love the anecdote I tell. I went to a luncheon in 2012 where the discussion at that lunch was about cryptocurrency, because I'm an ex-IT person, so I understand blockchain. I do understand the tech. And so we were discussing at that time whether the Bitcoin would go from $1.50 to $2. And so I was discussing with my wife, should we buy or not? And I just checked today. Today, the Bitcoin price is $121,694.90 US. Wow. If I had have bought 500 coins back then, I probably wouldn't be doing this show, actually. So it's just one of those fascinating things. I'm really staggered that it's such a high percentage that they see this as their first foray into investing. And given that we're about education here at Dollars and Making Sense, I don't think that's a bad thing then.
That's right. That's a good way to look at it. Like, it is much more accessible to people, I think, because, I mean, there's been a lot of change in this space in the last 10 years anyway. You've got a lot more sort of direct to investor apps now. So buying stocks has gotten a lot easier as well. But, in the past, having to go through sort of a third party to get into investing, and, the minimum of investment amounts being, 1,000 or more, it varied a lot. But these kinds of things were all barriers, and cryptocurrency has been part of the story in actually reducing those barriers, particularly for the young people, and sort of getting them interested in investing and hopefully financial literacy more broadly and that kind of thing.
And again, I look at your paper and see about the different type of crypto assets held. It's pleasing to see that there is diversity even in that space. So it's not just about Bitcoins or the altcoins, or Ethereum, for example, being that base level white label. I guess what does concern me, though, is I see down the list, I still see things like Trump coin. I actually happened to be in Dubai earlier this year when Eric Trump was in town. There was this huge digital currency conference. And there are many ways to look at those kind of coins as just simply, garnering money. There's certainly no long-term benefit there unless you wish to curry political favor. I guess one of the things I'd like to ask you, you've got a point there, making sense of meme coins. Can you explain to the audience what is a meme coin?
Meme coin is basically a token that has been built around a meme, which is kind of, I guess, a joke. It's part of meme culture on the internet. So these tokens are not designed to have a use case. A very popular one is Dogecoin, which it was actually started as a joke by two Aussie guys. So that was never meant to really get as big as it did, but it did. It really caught on. And I think that's quite interesting point to think about, because yes, this is a space where people are thinking about money and wealth creation and that kind of thing, but it's also where we're seeing a lot of subcultures come through. And a huge part of cryptocurrency is also the community side to it. You know, there's heaps of activity online, particularly on Reddit and these different sort of chat groups and that kind of thing. So meme culture has inevitably worked its way into this and now been attached to finance. But, you know, there's a couple of considerations here. People aren't usually, you know, going all in on meme coins. It's often a small allocation that they'd have. Some people do it for a bit of a joke. But there is also the, you know, financial incentive in it, because these meme coins have such strong basically virality potential. You know, they can go viral and people can make considerable amounts of money from it if they sort of exit at the right time. And that's why in the paper I kind of referred to them as hot potatoes, where people are kind of passing them on, trying to get their timing right and that kind of thing. And now it's become so oversaturated. You know, there's meme coins popping up every minute, basically. So it's really the people designing them are really trying to guess what is going to go viral and to make a meme coin around that. But I don't think many people who buy them are sort of treating them as a serious part of their portfolio.
Yeah, it's a curiosity then. I shrug my shoulders and go, then why would you put good money into something like that? That sounds more like something you'd chuck into a poker machine.
I mean, I guess with crypto, you've got it all together. You've got this sort of gambling stocks sort of thing, and then you've got like the more trustworthy ones. So we see the most, I would say probably the most trust toward Bitcoin, and that's where most people are holding. And that also comes through in how long they plan to hold these assets.
That was my very next question. I think what fascinates me here is, again, on page 12 of your white paper, you've got the plans for holding crypto assets. So these are people that are going, you know, they're going long. They're not looking at this as a volatile trade. They're looking at it and going, you know what, I'm going to buy whatever the price is and come back and talk to me in 10 years. And hopefully it will have been a banger and gone through the roof, which is, again, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out for the people who invested in Bitcoin. That's had very strong performance. So, I mean, yeah, people are kind of trying to guess what is going to stick in this system, because there are thousands, tens of thousands of cryptocurrencies out there. So eventually they may have to consolidate a little bit. So yeah, people are sort of having different opinions on that. And there's some people that are completely into Bitcoin. So they're referred to as Bitcoin maxis. And they're kind of your all-in people. And Bitcoin's an interesting one because there are some distinctions. People are very sort of have strong opinions on this, distinguishing Bitcoin from other cryptocurrencies. And again, I would say meme coins from, you know, more sort of cryptocurrencies with a strong use case and a serious kind of development path. So it's important not to sort of generalize in this space, because you've got so many different things going on. But yes, there are some people that are sort of religious about Bitcoin, you could say.
Okay, so I want to round out our discussion today. The final thing that you cover in your paper is crypto and superannuation. And we've talked about this before on the show. I've had people from the Taxpayers Association. We've been talking about that. And again, I think what's interesting here, we've got a pivotal moment, which you mentioned in here, when AMP became the first fund to allocate capital to crypto. So they invested 27 million into Bitcoin, which again, in the size of AMP, it's a drop in the ocean. But the fact that they did it in the first instance is a real validation, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that was really interesting to see for me. Since then, I don't think anyone else has, none of the sort of big players, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. And I mean, it did work out for AMP, their timing. They would have kind of made a nice gain on that investment.
Sure. Now, obviously, people in SMSFs, you determine your own future, you determine your own path, and so it sees here that your information says that 59% of your respondents that have SMSFs have crypto. So that's 60% roughly. That's quite a lot.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I think part of what's driving this is actually the lack of access in traditional sort of super funds. So those people that have significant holdings, for instance, they may have invested early, they need somewhere to basically store that for their future. So some of them actually choose to set up an SMSF because of their crypto holdings. Others are your traditional sort of SMSF trustees, and they see crypto as another good addition to get some growth in their portfolio and that kind of thing. So you've got different sort of players in the mix there.
Well, certainly gives you a bit of diversity. I'm an SMSF holder myself. Probably won't go towards this me personally, but I can certainly understand why people 20, 30 years my junior would as a long-term play. So look, ladies and gents, we're just about out of time. Anna, you finish off your white paper with talking about blockchain integrated financial services, which was of great interest to me. We don't have enough time to talk about it today. Certainly, look, it's been a fascinating discussion. Thank you for coming back on the show. It's always a pleasure to have you, as with all your Coredata alumni. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll provide a link in our blog. I know, Anna, you'll have this link on the Coredata website.
That's the plan.
Okay, so Anna Venonnen, key researcher at Coredata here in Sydney. Thank you so kindly for coming on the show, Dollars Making Sense, and talking about crypto and what is happening here in the Australian scene. It's been fascinating.
So much, Ray. It was great to be on the show, and I enjoyed the conversation.
Have a great day. Bye.